This is the S.J. Childs Show, hosted by S.J. Childs, streaming on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Find us on all social medias. The S.J. Childs Show, bringing value to families through education and resources. Check us out weekly, where we'll have new and exciting guests. Thanks so much for your support. Enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by S.J. Childs Books for Children. Visit sjchilds.org today to check out their special needs book collection. Teach inclusion and neurodiversity in this special 7-book collection. Get yours today. Sponsors include Blinky Minky Blankets, handmade double-sided Minky blankets, highest quality and craftsmanship, creating your perfect blanket for your loved one as a special forever gift. Code word the mouth for discount today. By Dana Ball Legal Services. Avoid common legal mistakes and protect your small business. Dana makes it affordable for your Utah small business to avoid common legal mistakes with business operations, contracts, and employees. Get more information today at danaballlaw.com. By Moving with Autism, a service for autism families seeking real estate and design services that provide support for their child's development and family lifestyle. Natalie Castro is a Utah autism real estate specialist and autism sibling whose mission is to connect families to community support with sensory-friendly designs and relocation services. By Elevation Chiropractic Center, get started on your path to full health. Elevation Chiropractic Center uses the upper cervical chiropractic technique to get results by identifying and solving the root issues of your medical condition quickly and safely. Elevation Chiropractic Center, Salt Lake City, Utah. This story is brought to you by Water and Body Basics, West Valley City, Utah. Hi, welcome to the S.J. Childs Show. I'm your host, S.J. Childs, and today I have a wonderful guest, Simon Majumdar, and I probably just said it wrong again. I practiced it in my head a million times and said it out loud, but when it comes down to stage fright, right? Not how it goes. Thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure to have you.
It's a thrill to be here, and don't worry about the name. Trust me, over the years, I've had people pronounce it in every which way, so I'm used to it now. And it is an odd one. Yeah. It is an odd one. It's a Bengali name. It comes from my father's heritage in Calcutta.
Well, that DJ that had just come in here had asked previously, well, what is his name? Where is that from? And so I'll have to tell him that. He'll be fascinated because geography is another one of his love of passions that he loves. And so I'll share that with him. He'll be happy to know that.
Mine too.
Yeah. Well, and with your lifestyle that you're able to live now, traveling and food and writing, I mean, such a lucky kind of career. I love all of those things. I can't imagine who wouldn't love to do those things. What got you started, and where did you find this passion that got you started?
Gosh, well, I mean, first of all, just to acknowledge what you said is I'm a great believer in gratitude and understanding the luck that I have and lots of people have, but so I know that I'm very fortunate to do this career that I do that takes me onto the Food Network and to write, and under normal circumstances, obviously, to be traveling around the world. Not so much, obviously, in the last couple of years, but, we're beginning to ease ourselves out. I mean, my story is quite an unusual one, I think, for a lot of people, because I didn't come at being this food person through being a chef or working in restaurants, although I've worked in quite a few of them now when I'm doing events and in hotel kitchens and stuff. I came at it very odd background in the UK, and as you can tell from my accent, I'm from the UK, and although I'm an American citizen, I've been here for 12 years now, and an American citizen since 2014. I've still got the Brit in me, as it were, and I haven't lost the accent, because I think it's probably the only reason I get work sometimes. But actually, if I go way back when, I was actually training and wanted to become an Episcopalian, an Anglican minister. So I trained in theology. I have a degree in theology from King's College London. I thought I was going to go and live in one of those little villages you see on Masterpiece Theatre and kind of preach the word during the day and solve mysteries at night that you see on Masterpiece Theatre. But when it came to the selection process for that, they decided, and I decided at the same time, really, that it wasn't going to be me. And at the age of 21, I had to go and think of a different kind of career. I ended up, again, by accident. A lot of things in my life happened by accident, ending up in publishing. So I got a job in a bookshop because I needed a job to pay the rent. I then ended up through the bookshop getting employed by Penguin Books, famous publisher, and ended up kind of gravitating through the Penguin hierarchy, becoming a manager and a director, and then staying in publishing for nearly 20 years, different publishers, and ending up running a publishing company for myself with someone for a while. But as happens a lot of times, things go well and then they don't go well. And in 2004, now my mother died of leukemia, and the company I was helping to run was beginning to fail pretty miserably. And actually a lot of it, and I tell this story, a lot of it's because I made a lot of mistakes, and it's sometimes very humbling. We don't often want to think of ourselves as people who make mistakes, particularly when you're in your 30s and 40s. You think you're kind of immortal and the whole world is going to revolve around you and you're doing everything well. Well, I wasn't. And, I was worrying about people losing their jobs. And quite frankly, on one day, I was getting ready to jump off the balcony of my apartment in London. I have a beautiful apartment. And I was ready just to jump off, and that was it. I was so desperate and I was so miserable and unhappy. And luckily for me, the people in the apartment below opened their French windows, their big windows, and the smells of their food that they were cooking, which is why they'd open the windows, started to waft up. And they were a Lebanese family, so it was these incredible smells. If people know Lebanese food, it was remarkable. And so I decided, and I say this a lot when I talk about this story, which I do a lot, that I became more hungry than suicidal. So I said, I'm going to go and cook a meal. So I did. I went to cook a dish that's on my website called Life-Saving Dal. Dal is an Indian lentil gravy, really delicious, and almost like our family's version of chicken soup. It's what nourishes body and soul. And so while I was cooking this dish, you have to stand at the pot because you don't want it to burn. I was looking at my cookbooks, but there was a notebook there. And in this notebook, it was something that someone had got me when I was doing one of these kind of Anthony Robbins courses, the self-help courses, which, I didn't really get a lot out of, but I learned how to set goals for myself. And in that notebook, I'd written all the goals I wanted to do when I turned 40, which were things like run a marathon and have a suit made to measure, and I had my teeth straightened. I had kind of very British teeth. I had them kind of fixed. But at the bottom were two phrases that have become the standpoint for my life. And that was go everywhere, eat everything. And if you look behind me, there's actually a picture I've got that someone made for me saying go everywhere, eat everything.
I love that.
And I still remember while I was eating that life-saving dal that I started thinking about what that meant. And I'd always been a traveler. I traveled for work. I'd always wanted to travel more. But business had stopped me just because, so I was so busy with publishing. And I said, this is it, I'm off. So the next day I went to talk to the lady who owned the company that I helped to run. And I said, I'm off. It's good. It's better for you and it's better for me if I leave as soon as possible because I'm not doing well for the company and the company is not doing well for me. And so, a few weeks later, I was on Bondi Beach, and that was the beginning of this new life that I live now, because I ended up writing a book called Eat My Globe. And that was a journey where I went to 31 countries in a year. And I wrote about all the food that I experienced and the people I met. And I had some good times, I had some bad times, but, out of that came many different things. So my wife here, I live in Los Angeles. I met my wife while on those travels in Brazil. And then I wrote my book, and then someone at the Food Network read my book. And and my manager also, my now manager, still for 12 years or more, read my book and asked me if I'd come and meet them. So I did. I ended up getting a manager here in LA because I moved out here to get married. from London, and then someone at the Food Network read it, and I was invited to come and interview to do a show called The Next Iron Chef, which was, I didn't know at the time, coming from England, what was the biggest show on the Food Network. So I ended up, by pure luck and by hopefully doing a good interview, being on The Next Iron Chef. And that was the beginning of this career now that's lasted, kind of well over 10, 12 years of being on the Food Network.
Amazing.
I've written 3 books now. I have my own food history podcast. And I do a lot of demos and talks, which I love, about food history and about food and demonstrating food. So I've really been very fortunate that from that very dark experience, and sorry, this is a very long-winded answer, but I love it.
I love it.
From this very kind of dark experience, at an age where often people might go, well, you're pretty set in what you do, I was able to kind of recreate another life with a beautiful wife, a beautiful living in Los Angeles, just changing who I am and or really what I do rather than who I am.
Wonderful.
And being able to have these amazing experiences. And the reason that I'm talking to you is because of that. So I'm very grateful that all that happened. So that's really my background. But cooking and food has always been a part of my life, that whole go everywhere, eat everything. Not just because I like to eat, which I patently do if you look at me. But I like it because of the way that it brings people together, whatever their hospitality is, whatever their politics are, whatever their religion is, whatever their, anything about them, sitting down is universal. And it's something that I've used as I've traveled all over the world, all over the United States, which is pretty polarized right now. But I can sit down with anyone and share a meal. And so it's put me in amazing experiences. And I know that, obviously you talk a lot about autism, and that's something that, I've experienced. I keep that private because obviously the people involved are family, and I don't want to talk about that. But it's something that I'm aware of how it impacts on family at a very close level. And I've even found it impacting there, where I've spent time with classes that use food as a kind of way of giving people kind of everyday lifestyle skills, and they're making, whether it's sandwiches and I've spent time with them. And so food has given me opportunities that a lot of people don't get. So
across a wide range. That's neat.
Across a very wide range of people and religions and countries. And I started off this story by saying how grateful I am, and I'll finish it by saying that I'm reminded every day now just how grateful I am when I get opportunities to chat to people like you and lots of other people in different fields.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored because I agree. And I think that what resonated the most about you, it was that authentic kindness, that just genuine kindness that you have. And I am just so pleased to have you on here today to talk to you. I have an interesting question. Did you ever go back to that family? Did the Lebanese family, have they come full circle?
And here's the sad thing is that the family, because I kind of just got on with my life and started going around. They were, I believe, and again, I don't know the full story, but I believe they were just on a very short-term rent of that apartment because it's very close to the banking district in London. And as far as I know, and I don't know, the concierge or the doorman of my apartment building told me that they moved out fairly soon afterwards, and I never got to see them. I never got to say hello. And the only reason I recognize or think that they're Lebanese is because of the food smells, which I know and love, and the smells of that. And they may have been from one of the areas around.
I love it.
There.
Yeah.
But for me, I never got the chance to say thank you. But the reason that I'm kind of sitting here is probably because of them and the fact that they chose the opportunity to open the window at that time. Right. And I think what that shows me as well is that accidents in the nicest possible way, and we always think of accidents as being a bad thing, but accidents in the nicest sense can be really extraordinary too. So, how I meet people along the road, how I end up doing the things that I do can often happen in the most kind of unexpected ways. Yeah. And so one of the things that's taught me to do is, whenever I'm asked to do a podcast, and I'm fortunate people ask me to talk about, to come on podcasts, a fair bit, which I love doing. is I always say yes, as long as I have the time and I'm not traveling, because everyone comes at doing their podcast or their interview from a different point of view. And
Yeah.
hopefully, as we continue to talk, I'll learn more about how you're here and the reason you're doing it, and the what you're fulfilling to everybody else by doing it.
Yeah,
And that was
definitely.
true of, we connected through Sam Mitchell, who has a wonderful blog, wonderful podcast called Autism Rocks and Rolls, and
Yeah,
really, really, fascinating young man, and
isn't
really,
he?
really achieving a lot
Mm.
as well. So,
Yeah.
those things happen, and I love that too.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. And just the fact that you can find kind of something in common with somebody from so far away. I think that it's fascinating when you can connect like that. And I'm sure as you've traveled and, like you said, sat down for meals with different people in their homes or in different places, I can imagine how much culture and diversity that you've, experience through those opportunities, and that's incredible. And I
You
really,
do. Oh,
yeah,
I
go, no,
said
please, please.
you do see a lot of diversity, which is fantastic. And of course, there are many great
Mm,
different cultures and cuisines in the world, and I love to experience them all. The other side of that, though, is that for all of our differences differences that we like to be told of, you also realize that people are pretty much the same.
yeah.
If you go to some of the countries I have in Africa, or you go to some of the countries in the Middle East, or I go to India, or I go to Southeast Asia, wherever I go, you know, mothers and fathers still want to make sure their kids are well fed. They still want their kids to be
Mm.
educated. Boys and girls still wonder if boys and girls like them.
I love
All
it.
of all
Yeah.
of those things that we think are kind of just us, and then we look at someone who is very different from across the world and might live differently, their housing might be different, and you go, actually, when you sit down with them, the things that make them happy or embarrassed or guilty or worried are all pretty similar, those human conditions.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that there aren't lots of things that we can learn from them. The one thing I have found more, and I try to do this, is I try not to be fearful now of other people from across the world. And even people here, I have my own political beliefs, and there are people here who have very different political beliefs. What I don't want to do is to look at them in any other way than they're just another human being
Yeah.
trying to express a viewpoint.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, we should be sensible about that. And if people are
Yes.
threatening or anything else, that's different. But at the same time, food has proved a great vehicle for spending time with lots of different people, and I love that.
Yeah, definitely. And I love what you said about, finding out kind of even what I'm about and what my show is about. And a lot of what you just said engulfs a lot of that. And that is looking at humans for the humans that they are, and really realizing how together as a community, we are diverse. We are so different in our thinking and our ways of living, but we are all so much the same in our humanity. And that once we, evolve ourselves to look at one another through the eyes of love and kindness and lift others up, that helps us to raise and to be, better examples and to better teachers and mothers. And it's just so incredible how you say that, though, how there's, mothers and fathers, they still want their kids to be safe and to eat healthy and all of those things. So let's bring it back to eating. I have a kind of an interesting question, and we'll go on kind of the autism and eating guidelines here. Have you had the opportunity to maybe integrate ways of helping parents maybe find foods that might be easier for their child? A lot of children with autism have food aversions, have texture aversions, scent aversions, things like that. And I know, you said one thing when you were doing some of your cooking and shows that I was watching, how much you use your sense of smell. And I do as well. I just have a strong sense of smell. And it's so
Absolutely.
important to me when I smell the cake, I know it's done, and those kinds of things. And so have you been able to, accommodate any families or your own through those situations?
Well, I think one of the things that comes out that is obviously more news to me than it is to you, because this is something you encounter every day, dealing with people in different levels and how functional they might be and how not, and you're obviously and so the diversity within this group of autism, I think, is something that was not news to me, but when you see it firsthand and you go to a school and you help, you'll see from young people who are almost having to be secluded from everything because even the lights will cause them upset, to some who are quite kind of not functional, because everyone's functional, but alpha and kind of want to be in charge and want to be showing who they are and that they're in charge. So what I like to do is to look at that variety across. So if you are doing that, to look at things that give a function so they can understand how to put something together, and then using a piece of equipment so they can use that, and actually being there to guide them through it. So I still remember in one occasion, and I come at this from a very kind of experience of happening to know people in that, rather than being an expert of any kind. So any mistakes I make, I hope people understand it's me, not anyone who's I've worked with or talked to. But things like making sandwiches is one of those great things, because everyone can do it. It's kind of with 2 pieces of bread and then whatever you want to put. And that kind of free form of what goes inside that piece of bread is so great for them to express who they are, because it could be very unusual stuff. Very unusual, which is great. Yeah. Because what you're doing is you're going, well, I want to have fruit and this in my sandwich. Good for you. There's no right and wrong. But using the grill, using this, having someone who is kind of very out front, who goes, well, I'm going to be in charge of the bread, and you see them taking charge of handing out the 2 pieces of bread, you get 2, and someone going, well, I want 3 pieces of bread because I want to make a club sound. So I think that side of it, when I did it, was amazing. And I will be honest, you can look at this from a kind of altruistic, I'm going and helping. I got so much more out of that as well, because you're spending time with these remarkable, in this case, young people. And so that was one side of it where I came out of it and I kind of blossomed as well, partly because I was beginning to understand, autism more than I had done before, but also just because these are incredible young people, men and women, men and women. And they were we're talking high school age. So it was really, really interesting. The other thing that I've found, again, when I've encountered people, is sometimes the formula, the process is as important as the eating. And that could be, I'm talking to someone who's eating a green bean casserole that you have at Thanksgiving, and they go, well, this is how it should be. And so what you realize then is that formula of doing something is very important to them, because that's their building block for what they're going to eat. Yeah. So I've learned that as well, that I can't go in and go, well, I'm a chef and I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this sauce and I'm going to do this and do this. And then they become so disorientated by what I'm doing that food becomes almost a threat in one case. And it's like it's not something that brings them joy. And one of the things I am a great believer in is that that food should be something that brings us joy. It shouldn't be the enemy. And one of the problems we have in the United States generally, particularly when we talk about weight loss and things like that, is we think of food as the enemy. We go, oh, I was naughty because I ate a cake, or I was this, or this is bad food and this is good food. Yeah. And a lot of cultures, particularly if you go to the kind of Spanish, Italian, the Mediterranean areas, they have so much joy in their food. And I think that's one of the things I want to come back. So I'm learning, and I certainly don't have the experience that you have, where you're having to feed different people and they all have their different wants and needs. Yes, and very particular. And I'd love to hear more about that. But but it's fascinating for me, and I'm learning more because I think this is important, and we do have this growing community that of people with autism that are contributing amazingly. But I think our job, and particularly as a food person, is to have to support that. Yeah, and absolutely. The thing you mentioned, I think before we were recording, about having kind of see-through pots and pans if you're doing that, so people can see what's going on, so it's not hidden. It's something I never thought of before, but now you mention it,
Yay.
I go, actually, wouldn't that be amazing to do when I do my demonstrations? Because
Brilliant.
the equipment is out there now to do, pans that are completely see-through, and you can even have knives that are completely see-through now. I mean, all kinds of things that we could do that would be useful anyway, just for demonstrations, but particularly for this.
Well, yay. I'm glad I could contribute to something. That's fantastic. I think that's great. Yeah. In our family, it's interesting because we have obviously a husband who is where I started accommodating. Like, we've been together for 18 years, and we've only been focusing on autism for the last decade. So for the 8 years before that, this was a guy who just could not eat with people. He could not eat around me. He didn't want to see me, and there was all these rules around eating, and he did not find joy in eating. It was a real struggle for him. And I'm quite different. I grew up, and my father loves to cook. We cook together all the time. And so that was something that for me was very joyful and always brought joy to those who I cooked for, right? And you love that part about it, when someone is just like, yes, this is so good. I wait for the sounds to see. Are they going to love it? But so when our son started showing, a little, when he was a baby, of course, he ate all the foods, all the things, but then it stopped. And there was a point where for us, I was doing a lot of research on autism at the time. He was diagnosed when he was 16 months old. So quite early on. And at that time, you're just moving to you've just moved into, he's definitely into solid foods, but you still are introducing foods, if you will, at that early of an age. And so I had read some information or received information about gluten and casein, and I did my own research. And I'm not a doctor or a scientist or anything like that. This is all anecdotal information. But what I found to be fascinating was that both casein and gluten are proteins. And in my research and in what I was finding with my own son was that these proteins were causing inflammation, both in his gut and in his brain, which were causing him to be nonverbal and to have very unusual stimming behaviors. And so when he was little, he would spin circles, flap his arms, hum a lot, and bang himself into things all the time.
Oh my
and
gosh.
He was nonverbal. And so we would have to cover his room with cushions. We just had like cushions around every corner of walls and everything, because he would just spin and bump into things. And it wasn't until, I was researching, like, what could this be, that I had found this information. And so I had to remove the gluten and the casein, which 10 years ago, there was not a lot of options.
Very difficult. And it was a lot much easier now.
Yes.
It is much easier now.
There are so much more. But at the same time, the foods that he used to love and eat were now gone, and finding him foods that he would now eat was nearly impossible. It's been a struggle even till now, and it's been years, and we try things all the time. We try new things. But when my husband was diagnosed and I was able to say, okay, now I see, now I understand all of these accommodations I've made for food for all of these years for this man that I love, I can make these accommodations for my child as well. And now I can see the purpose behind it and really give it the reason and the intentions behind it, which changes everything. It didn't make him eat more, but it made me less stressed.
What I think is interesting there, that you have, that and I'm not cooking for a family, we don't have kids, but I'm very able to improvise. I go, what's in the fridge? We've got this and this. And also I come from a cooking background, so I'm going to go and I can get X things from the fridge and create something hopefully tasty. What I think from your point of view, which is fascinating from me, is you're working on a very kind of strict, well, I know I've got to have these. I know I have to have these. These are both going to be nutritionally functional, but they're also going to be something that will get eaten. And And I think that's interesting. It's a challenge. It's something that I would find challenging, even coming from a cooking background. And I find that really fascinating. But I think you have to do that because apart from anything else, one of the things that I think will be more important almost for you than for me, and I try and cook food that is nutritional and wonderful, and but sometimes I will add things that often they might not, just because I like butter and I like. But you have to be with your family, and I think all the people listening to this who are cooking for their families, you're going to have to be aware of every single thing you put into every dish. Everything has a purpose, both positive and negative. And that, to me, is fascinating to look at. And I want to go and do more research on that too. But having to do that at the same time as having a life. And to do all the other things that people who look after homes or are working and looking after homes, husbands and wives, doing all of that, I think is really, really, it's impressive for me. I don't know that I would have the discipline, but I think if you have children or you have people you care for, whether, again, if it's husband or wife cooking, you kind of, just the care that you have for your family is going to give you the strength to do that, I suspect.
Absolutely. And everybody will probably be very surprised to hear this, but our family, I've been to maybe less than a handful of restaurants with my husband in almost the 2 decades we've been together. We eat everything at home. I make everything at home. Our kids have never been to a McDonald's in their whole entire lives. For 12 years that the oldest has been alive, 10 years for the youngest, they've never eaten that type of a processed meal. I'm not saying that some of them, it was like you said, I can't keep all of the non-processed cereals out of the house and things like that they love sometimes. But for the most part, it's like a homestead. It's like, I could just make everything from, I've done it for so long. And our youngest, who was just diagnosed maybe 5 to 6 weeks ago, which she's just turned 10. So it's so different, the differences between males and females and autism. That's a whole nother 10 episodes to go over. But it's so fascinating to see her because she's extremely emotionally mature and very just mature on all these other levels. Her eating habits, oh my goodness, are so mature. If she has something and she doesn't feel well afterwards, she won't touch it again. She's not like ridiculous like the rest of us humans, who is like, chocolate, oh, it gave me sick, I'll eat it again. I'll eat it again. She's pretty much became a vegetarian on her own, gauging the way she feels when she has something to eat. She loves turkey and she loves chicken, but sausage or pork or not really pork, but rather beef, she doesn't like it. It doesn't make her feel well, and she reacts immediately to that, which I think is just like superhuman. I don't know. It's amazing.
I think that's great, and it's something that not a lot of people have. Is looking immediately at how food impacts on your body, and it's so strange when and I'm guilty of it too, but when you if you put the wrong fuel into your car, you'll soon find out that your car is not going to work. And obviously, much as I like to think of food as glorious and art and all of those things that I do, in the end it serves a purpose, and that purpose is fuel. However, and I think we don't always, as adults particularly, are very good at understanding, because we may have learned things as well. So, my mother, who's no longer with us, but there may have been things she fed me, particularly back in the 70s when things were a lot more processed. There weren't so many options. There weren't so many. And I just realized that I was feeling sick, but I had no idea it was, the fish sticks or the whatever it was that we were served. So I think what's good now is there's a lot more information. Maybe there's too much information, but particularly if you start working with, and I know there are people in working in the autism field who are nutritionists and dietitians and scientists looking at it, and I think it's very important to to look at what they're saying. And obviously, medical advice and all of the advice that you're getting, I'm sure, is really vital. And it's, again, when I meet people who are involved in that area, I'm really fascinated by what they achieve and what they contribute. And when they start telling me, well, X will cause this, I didn't know so much about the casein and the gluten.
Oh, yeah.
I've found that out today, and I'll go and read more about that.
Yeah.
So I think learning, kind of being curious about the food.
Mm-hmm.
And also what I think happens then, again, from a kind of functional point of view, is starting having those conversations with the children, with your husband, with whoever, and then going, well, what is it that makes you happy about food? Is there something when we serve it that just makes you really pleased? That you're really happy. We want this. I love this. We love, and those are the things that I think where you can start going, well, rather than it just constantly being a challenge, which it is, feeding, is to say that there are aspects of it that bring real joy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think
so
I was just going to say, when I brought my husband in and he did a little bit, started to do more cooking with me and finding out the things that he loved, just like you said, exactly. When we got the 12 barbecue sauces that he could try with everything was good from then on out, right?
Hey, well, very few things are bad with a barbecue sauce on them.
That's right. That's his motto. I love that. We are just having such an amazing conversation. I think that we could probably keep talking for a very long time. Unfortunately, our time is running down, but we had a really great. I love that I discovered all of these things about you, and you were able to do the same and kind of learn some things from me, and that's just it's such an amazing opportunity to be able to share those things with you today.
Well, for me, I think it's when you meet someone who's involved in a community, whatever that community is, and here obviously we're talking about autism, I always make sure people know I'm not an expert. I have some experience of it because of a family circumstance, and that's brought me some knowledge, but I certainly am no expert. And so I as I stand before, and you'll have people who know a lot more about it listening to you because your show's obviously popular. I hope they just understand if I've made any kind of mistakes in describing things, or I always just say, it's not, none of it is done willfully. It's done because I come from a place, hopefully, of kind of care and concern, and I want to learn more, and I want to, and this is why, when I've done some shows, so I did a couple of shows where I cooked rather than just judging, for Cutthroat Kitchen and one other, and I actually used an autism concern that I work with as the kind of beneficiary for any of the money that I won for that. We were able to give some money for that. And because I think we would all love to support every concern, we all want to make sure, but we can't. So I think you have to find the ones that are really kind of personal to you, which obviously this is because of your close family ties. But I think what we need to do is to find those and then really work in depth. So I have a few that I work in around the world, and child hunger is a very, very important one for me around the world, because it just shames me that anyone on earth should ever be wanting for food. We produce so much of it and waste so much of it.
Yes.
But autism is one that is very important to me. But I make, like I said, huge amounts of apologies for not using sometimes the right terminology, and because I'm often an idiot as well.
No, not necessary. It was so funny because I had done a show with a Hollywood screenwriter and she is also neurodivergent. And I said, here's our expert. And she kind of laughed and she said, no one's an expert in autism. We're all just still learning and learning. And I said, okay, well, I'll just say you're a specialist then. So now that's what I can just say, I specialize in teaching about autism. But yeah, absolutely. None of us are experts, especially in autism, because it is just a growing perception all the time. So thank you so much.
That's the key for me.
Yeah.
Is if in this and the other, concerns that really get to the heart for me is what I can do is with Profile is I can appear on podcasts, I can talk about it, I can use what Profile, the good Lord has given me, which is, to be on TV, which is great. And I can use that to go, well, by the way, if you're interested, have a look at this and go and find out more about it. And that's where I can probably do more good than than other people who are more technical or whatever, but working kind of at the coalface, doing the real hard work. And what I can do is hopefully wave a flag and go, hey, come and look at this, and look at the people here, and look at what I always say is, when I meet communities, and particularly communities of people with autism, there's so much kind of amazing happening there as well. That everyone goes, oh, is that sad? Is that? But you go, no, there's incredible stuff happening too. That makes you just, well, we experienced it before, and you can tell people about that. And I experienced it with your son just before you started recording, and that's incredible.
What I you can fact check him. Just kidding.
It's genuinely incredible. And,
thank you.
And so when you see those, you have to understand that that's what we get here, and it's a remarkable community. But one that needs us to be aware and to be very supportive across the board.
Yeah, definitely. We need as many advocates waving the white flag, like you said, as possible, because it is so important that we see how much it is growing because of all of the information available and because of the perceptions that are changing around the world for that. So hopefully we can take some of your advice and realize that humanity exists around the globe as humanity, and we can both take that and just be kinder to one another, raise your neighbor, whoever, with love as much as you can. Right. Practice what you preach, Sarah.
It's often it can be tough, and I'm sure it can be tough people being to me as it is to others. We all have our moments, but I would imagine if you were to sit on a Zoom and chat to someone in say South Africa, or someone in Sri Lanka, or someone in China, and with help in translation, all of those, but you talk to them about living with the autistic community, their concerns and their joy and their things that make them more fearful, they would all be pretty similar to you.
Isn't that the truth?
And I think that's the kind of thing we need to realize, is that some of these things that happen in our life, whatever they are, they're universal. And we can worry about it being here in the United States or being in Europe or wherever. We go, actually, all of these people, I would imagine sitting with someone with, dealing with the autistic, dealing is not necessarily the right word, but being with the autistic community in the Middle East or wherever, is going to be incredible to talk to them. And you're going, oh, but all I see is the news, and I see bombs, and I see this, and you go, well, here's a mother and father with their child. Look at how they deal with them, with their circumstance, and you go, actually, it looks pretty similar. So I think those things are, if we do nothing else, just at least think in that kind of universal way.
I love that. Thank you so much for your time today. Are there any new projects or things that you have coming up?
Well, I have been filming some things, but if I tell you, then I'm going to get into trouble. So,
well, just tell me when they come out. Then we'll reach.
There'll be some things. They'll be announcing some things soon, and I will post them on my website.
Love that.
My food history podcast, which is really fun, and that goes from everything from we interviewed Lou Diamond Phillips, the actor,
wow,
the actor,
yes,
because we were talking about his favorite films in history, or food scenes in films.
Okay.
But then we do the histories of tea or the history of coffee.
I love that.
And we're going to be interviewing Jacques Pepin in the new series. So I'm working on the new series of that. We're on our 8th series.
Okay. And what's the name of it?
So it's called Eat My Globe.
Okay, I love that.
And we've done 70 plus episodes. It takes a lot to write because
that's a lot of studying to do.
Well, because you actually have, each one is having to write an essay or a book about something, a lot. So people often go, well, why don't you do more? And I go, because I have to live and earn some money at the same time, because it takes a long time. But we're going to work on the new season. And then more travels. So the more we can travel, I do a lot for nonprofit events where I sit with them and I cook for dinners for 200 people, and we chat and we talk and we share. And so for me, that's one of the joys, is getting out and meeting people. So,
Definitely.
Hopefully, who knows where the road will take us, and maybe we'll cross over one of those and share a meal at some point.
If you ever come to Utah, I'm in Salt Lake City. So if they have Sundance next year instead of this year, right?
I do love Salt Lake City. It's a great food town. One of the chefs I know, Viet Pham, he had a restaurant there. I think he may have closed now. But there's some great food going on there. And obviously when you go to Park City, I haven't been for a few years. But I've always had there's a lady who has a great bakery there, wonderful bakery that has.
I love bakeries.
This is a really very well known in the area of bakery, and their food is amazing. It's gone out of my head now, the name of the bakery, but it's some of the best I've ever had. So I'll have to try and remind myself to email you.
Yeah, I would love that. Absolutely. Like I said, I'll just leave the husband at home and take my daughter, and her and I will hit the town. I'm excited for her
terrific. She's terrific. This bakery is very well known in Salt Lake City.
I probably know it when you say it, right? And I'll be like, of course. That's fantastic.
It's just totally gone blank in my head, of course.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It was such a pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you more. And I hope that we can stay connected. Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to talk to you. And I've learned a great deal. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. And keep doing the good work. Oh, I'll do it. Nobody's going to stop me. Thank you so much. Blinky Minky Blankets, handmade double-sided Minky blankets, highest quality and craftsmanship, creating your perfect blanket for your loved one as a special forever gift. Code word the mouth for discount today. By Dana Ball Legal Services. Avoid common legal mistakes and protect your small business. Dana makes it affordable for your Utah small business to avoid common legal mistakes with business operations, contracts, and employees. Get more information today at danaballlaw.com. By Moving with Autism, a service for autism families seeking real estate and design services that provide support for their child's development and family lifestyle. Natalie Castro is a Utah autism real estate specialist and autism sibling whose mission is to connect families to community support with sensory-friendly designs and relocation services. By Elevation Chiropractic Center. Get started on your path to full health. Elevation Chiropractic Center uses the upper cervical chiropractic technique to get results by identifying and solving the root issues of your medical condition quickly and safely. Elevation Chiropractic Center, Salt Lake City, Utah. This story is brought to you by Water and Body Basics, West Valley City, Utah.